Hi guys, Timster here, back for another video. My chair just made a very weird noise there, that was quite worrying. So yes, I'm back for another video, and today I'm going to be doing a very detailed track-by-track review on the 2010 album Mirage by Armin van Buuren. But before we get started, obviously there's a few things I'd like to say. If you want to skip ahead to the actual review, then I'll put an annotation or a link in the description or something to tell you when the review actually begins. But anyway, yeah, I'm sorry again, as I've said multiple times, about my lack of regularly uploading recently. I've just been incredibly busy, and I've not really had an opportunity to actually make a video because I've been settling into uni, doing assignments, because for those of you who don't know, who are new to the channel or just haven't been watching my videos recently, I'm at uni, which I'll talk about in a bit, but yeah, sorry again for that, and apologies for the really shockingly appalling Christmas video I did 2 weeks ago at the time of recording. That was honestly the most rushed and worst quality Christmas special I've ever done. Normally I put together some sort of highlights of the year kind of compilation or something, but I just didn't do that. But anyway, this is my first video at uni, which I'm quite excited about, and I hope you guys are too. I'm not going to do a tour of my room or anything like that because it is pretty flipping small and it's pretty normal. There's a desk, a bed, and you know, it's just pretty boring. There's nothing really to show you, and I don't think it would make a good video. Plus, obviously, I want my own privacy, and you know, doing a tour of my room, I just haven't done that kind of thing before, and I don't feel comfortable doing it yet. So apologies if you're hoping to see that, but that's not going to happen for a long while, possibly not forever, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, it's my first video at uni, and I have a very different setup to what I normally have at home. My desk is huge, so I can fit a lot on here, so I've got the tripod and the camera and stuff. The only thing I don't have with me, well, the two things I don't have with me, which I do have at home, are my Mac, which is obviously at home because it is incredibly heavy. I can't believe how much that thing weighs, and, you know, I'm not going to take it to uni with me because I don't want it to be stolen. I'd far rather my less good laptop get stolen rather than my very expensive and much more powerful Mac. And I also don't have my microphone with me, so apologies if the audio quality is lacking. I do currently have like a really crappy dictaphone, as you can see here, made by some shitty French company. I'm not saying all French companies are shit, by the way, just the fact that this is literally made of plastic and is as shit as hell. I got it for like 10 quid. It's good for my lectures, but absolutely appalling quality for YouTube videos, although it's probably closer to the quality on my camera's microphone than anything else, but regardless. I'm also going to have to be talking a little bit more quietly because obviously I'm in my flat. My flatmates are around and they might actually be able to hear me now, and they're probably like, I don't know, filming me outside the door or something ridiculous. They probably can hear me through the walls, to be honest, but honestly, I do not care. I've made you guys a promise, and also I really wanted to do this video, so I'm going to crack on ahead with it and ignore my flatmates banging on the walls or something and trying to disrupt the video. But anyway, on with the review. So, I'm going to be doing a detailed, as I've already said, track-by-track review of Armin van Buuren's 2010 album Mirage. I actually have two albums by Armin van Buuren, and this is the first one I think I got. So I've got the CD. I don't have the vinyl because I don't have a vinyl player, and also, you know, vinyls are huge compared to a CD, which is much more concise. You still get a little bit of reflection from the light, but you can see the album quite clearly. That's Armin van Buuren there, the man himself. And obviously there's quite a cool effect with his shadow doing something completely different behind him. And he's got his stamp at the top, which I'll talk about later. It's quite a gloomy kind of picture, but pretty cool. Very much his sort of style. This album has 16 tracks altogether. The inside is just completely red, and we'll have a look through the cover book. And As you can see on the first couple of pages, it just has his songs and who made them, who helped him make the songs and who composed with him, or the vocal productions, who published it, and all those sorts of things. Then on the next page there's quite a nice quote which says, "Don't be a prisoner of your own style." Now, having listened to Armin van Buuren's music and this album, this will make a lot of sense later on during the review. And when I found it, I actually found it quite amusing, because he definitely isn't a prisoner of his style that he normally had in the past in this album. But yeah, the next few pages are literally just his the lyrics to the songs that have lyrics anyway. So I'm guessing if you're watching this review, you'll most likely know who Armin van Buuren is. If you don't, then let me explain. Armin van Buuren is a Dutch DJ who hails from South Holland and who specialises in producing, mixing and general messing around with trance music, a genre that's been going since the 90s and is still alive today, although not as popular as it once was. He started gaining popularity in 2001, which I'll explain how that occurred later on. And yeah, he's still making music as much as ever before, and yeah. So I will now play the album trailer to you, the trailer for the album Mirage, and well, you can see what you think yourself.
It's the intangible that you are looking for at every event. It's the rarity that you only find if everything is correct. It's a trip that you all can make only together, to a place where time and space do not exist. It is Mirage. Armin only returns with a brand new live show, full of spectacular acts and performances, a non-stop DJ set. Only if you're there, you'll understand. 2010, 2011, Armin only, Mirage. Coming soon to a city near you. More info and tickets, check arminonly.com. Get your tickets now.
So now on to the next question: why on earth is the album called what it is called? Because honestly, other than obviously the track number 2, which is named after the title, I can't really see any reason why the album would be called Mirage, and nothing in Armin van Buuren's life would suggest a reason. So all that I have really to go on is the official description of the trailer and what Armin van Buuren wanted from the album when he was making it. In the description for the trailer, it says that Armin wanted it to be the most diverse album he's ever created and the one with the most interpretations, which kind of implies that no one could really make out what the album was going to be like or about before it came out, and so it was kind of like a mirage. That's my theory. I mean, it's a pretty crappy theory, but it's the only one I've got to go on. So I'm afraid, unless you're willing to accept that he probably is just incredibly edgy and tries to choose the most, atmospheric name for his album, then you're just going to have to go with what I said. One thing I want to get absolutely clear before I actually start breaking down this album and listening to it and, all of that, is that although I love a lot of Armin van Buuren's music and I find it really atmospheric, because he's a trance DJ, I don't like him as a person at all. I want to make that absolutely clear. I love his music, and I love what he does, and he does it really well. And I definitely think he is one of the best trance producers out there. But I want to make it absolutely clear that I don't like him as a person. Whilst In interviews, he doesn't appear to be that edgy or arrogant, and he does genuinely come across as being interested in his trade and his genre, which he's been a major pioneer of. He, more often than not, seems less passionate about his music and more interested in boosting his own ego. He comes across often as quite self-entitled. I mean, if you just hop on his Facebook page and take a look, just search Armin van Buuren and find his official Facebook page, which should be at the top, and scroll through all his all the pictures he posts. It's always of him like relaxing, showing off how rich he is, and just generally flexing, which obviously isn't something that happens on YouTube at all. There is definitely no flexing of wealth whatsoever. But yeah, just hop over to his Facebook page and you'll see exactly what I mean. He seems quite arrogant and self-entitled and trying to make himself appear like some sort of god, which a lot of the trance community see him as. I have a feeling that a lot of the fame, the fact that he's got his own radio show, which he's been running for nearly 20 years now, that he's supposedly been valued as being worth more than David Guetta, which is saying quite a bit, and that he's been titled the King of Trance by quite a few trance magazines and reporters and the media in general. I think that's all gone to his head, and he has now kind of ascended mentally to thinking of himself as some sort of god, which, quite worryingly, a lot of the trance community agree with. Yeah, he currently has his own radio show, as I've already mentioned, called A State of Trance, which is broadcasted in over 82 countries on over 100 FM radio stations, and I think trawls around 37 million listeners each week when it airs, which is quite a few. That's a fair few number of people. It's currently, at the time of recording, I think on its 854th episode, I think. It started in 2001, so it's also like one of the longest lasting music radio stations on the planet. And yeah, I haven't actually listened to any of the episodes, but one episode in particular did catch my attention, which is episode 814, which is when me disliking him as a person kind of solidified itself for one big reason. At the time of the 814th episode, around that date, we unfortunately lost one of the greatest trance producers that has ever lived, Robert Miles. Some of you may have heard of him. He produced a track called Children, which is off his album Dreamland, I think is the name of the album. I can't remember. I've only listened to a few of his tracks. I haven't actually listened to any of his albums, and thinking about it, I probably should. But either way, he produced this track which got really popular, and I think most people know what it is. If not, go and search it up. It's an incredible track. I've listened to a few of his songs, not just that one, but that one is definitely one of my favourites, if not my absolute favourite. But either way, after a long, brave fight with stage 4 metastatic cancer, he sadly lost and passed away on the 9th of May 2017 in Spain. And yeah, it was really sad, and I remember just kind of feeling very empty that day because his music was incredible. I'd only just discovered him as well, like a year ago, in like 2016 or something, and yeah, I was just kind of, I don't know why it hit me so hard, but it did hit me quite hard about his death. So naturally I started researching into him, and I came across the 814th episode of Armin van Buuren's radio show A State of Trance, and in it he was giving a tribute supposedly to Robert Miles, and I use the word tribute very loosely because what he did was actually quite shocking. He obviously said that he was going to miss Robert Miles a lot and that his music had inspired him and, you know, meant a lot to him, and all the normal stuff that fellow musicians say when one of them dies or stops producing music or something. And then he said he was going to play Children, and he played it, and as it was playing in the background, he was just listening to it for a while, and then the camera just kind of switches to the camera behind him, and then he just starts messing around with people, flirting with some of the female radio show workers, and texting on his phone, just laughing away and joking around as if it's a normal day, whilst Robert Miles's, biggest track is playing in the background. And I was just shocked. I thought that was just so disrespectful. He's meant to be, giving a tribute to someone who supposedly inspired him, and he's just joking around and not taking it seriously at all, which I just found really disrespectful. And I think it was at that moment that my dislike for Armin van Buuren as a person solidified and really set in.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I had to do this. Last week, this news arrived too late for us to do it in the show, but of course, we received so many emails about this. Robert Miles passed away, which is a really, really sad thing, so early. And his music meant a lot for me personally. And not only the track I'm about to play you, but also all his other music. So I want to wish a lot of strength to his family and close friends. And in dedication and memory of Robert Miles, here's his big hit.
Now that I've got that out of the way though, let's move on to the actual review of the album itself. So the first track on the album I think is one of the greatest album openers I've heard. On its own, the track doesn't really do much. It's an incredibly short track. I can't remember how long it lasts. It's like 1 minute and 13 seconds or something. But either way, on its own, it seems pretty insignificant. But as an album opener, it just prepares the listener for what they're about to experience. It's really atmospheric and ethereal, with just the vocals of this female singer in the background, and it is literally just vocals essentially for the entire thing, and some backing vocals and stuff, but it's just really atmospheric, and in my opinion a really good album opener, and although some people find it quite cringy because it seems really edgy and like he's trying to be different and unique and stuff, I really like it. I think it's a really good album opener, and it is also an example of having one of the best transitions between tracks, in my opinion, with the next track, Mirage, because the transition is so smooth you don't even notice that the second track's come in, and I only noticed when I was kind of just staring at the track number change that I was like, whoa, that was a change, that was a transition. And yeah, it amazed me. I've been listened to the transition on like plenty of occasions, but I thought it was the same song, and it turns out it wasn't. It was just two songs with one of the smoothest transitions that I've ever heard, and it was just amazing. I've genuinely never heard a smoother transition since then. Then we come to Mirage, the second track. There's some really good synth sounds and a really good beat in the song, and it's definitely reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s, and It's a good example of why Armin van Buuren is an incredible trance producer, because he just takes you right back to, for me, a time when I wasn't even born, to be honest. But yeah, for those who'd been living in the 90s and 2000s when trance was at its peak, it would definitely take them right back. Having listened to music of that era, it's very similar. So I think he did a really good job of that, and he's incredibly talented at doing that kind of thing. He definitely knows his stuff as a producer, and that is definitely not to be argued with whatsoever. The string sounds work really well, as well as the muted trumpets towards the really rocky drop, which kind of surprised me. In fact, it really surprised me, to be honest. I just wasn't expecting a really hard, harsh guitar to just come in, and it did. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting, that's new. And I don't really know why he put it in there. I mean, it works really well. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's possibly, it sounds very much like Two Steps from Hell for those who've heard their music, and I'm not sure whether he was inspired by them or not, but it's definitely reminiscent of that. The transition after that is weird and doesn't really fit. I don't really get the transition after the rock when it just goes back to the synths. It's really clunky and just suddenly happens and you're like, oh, okay. And although some people find it cringy, again, because you have the rock drop and it sounds really cringy. I, although admittedly find it quite cheesy, I really like it actually, and it's definitely a track I keep going back to because of how energetic and emotionally powerful and surging the track is. And then the end with the 90s beat is just, again, amazing, and I wish he'd left the beat going a bit longer, to be honest.
Can you see?
The next track, This Light Between Us, is similar in the fact that there's a lot of strings and vocals used, which is very, very common in the trance genre, and it's used heavily by Armin van Buuren in this album especially, and a lot of other trance artists use it. This track really stands out above the others with the complex beat and with good bass. The song really blows you away. If you have good bass in your speakers, then it's amazing. It sounds really good. There's not too much echo. Trance synths that kind of appear in the background now and again are really nice and reminiscent again of the 90s and 2000s. And I really like the piano chords at the end. And when they appear in the background throughout, that's really nice as well.
I know you're feeling restless, like life's not on your side. It's weighing heavy on your mind.
The fourth track, Not Giving Up on Love, is one of my favourites, definitely from the album. Whenever I stick the album in, I almost always go first to that track because it is one of my favourites, if not my absolute favourite from the track. I really like the vocals of the singer, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, who for a while, before I looked at the front of the cover book, which gives all the singers who featured in the songs, I actually thought it was Lana Del Rey for a while, and I was incredibly surprised when people kept telling me, no, that's not Lana Del Rey, it's Sophie Ellis-Bextor. I'm like, who? It's definitely Lana Del Rey, and then I had to actually research it myself in order to be convinced that it wasn't Lana Del Rey, because their vocals and voice are essentially exactly the same. The bass again is really good on the song, and the beat is also one of the best. It's quite a shame that it's a very short song. I think he could have extended it a bit more, but that's quite a clever technique, I guess, of Armin, because it means that you just keep replaying that track. And it gets ingrained in your head then, and then you listen to it more often in the future, and you know, the song stays with you. And using that technique, he ensures that you listen to more of the songs in the future. So it's a very clever technique. It's been done by lots of artists before, but I get why it's quite a short track, but definitely my favourite from the album. The next track, I Don't Own You, is again a really good track. It's a good example of, a prime example, in fact, of trance music. I really like the repeated sample that's used throughout the song, and the synth sounds, and obviously the general ethereal atmosphere, which comes with trance music naturally. I really like the complex beat as well, which is more complex than some of his other tracks, which I really enjoyed, and importantly, for trance music, it has a really good build-up. That's one of the key parts of trance music, is not just the atmosphere, but building that atmosphere up till eventually you reach the climax where everyone's emotions just soar, and then you know you've got a good trance track when that happens, and that definitely happened with this track. The sixth track, Full Focus, although it has some really good trance sounds in there, again, some 90s and 2000s synths, especially in this track, are really shining through. And I get why it's called Full Focus as well, unlike some of the other songs where I, again, like the album's title, don't know where he's getting the titles from. But he explained in an interview that this song is called Full Focus because he was really trying to focus on the origins and what it truly means to make trance music, and he was trying to create the most, not generic, but the best example, I think, of trance music. However, for me, that kind of didn't work, because I do find this track incredibly generic, obviously because he was trying to create a prime example of trance music. It naturally, for a lot of people, I think, not just me, comes across as too generic. Not helped by the fact that it's 5 minutes long nearly, which was just far too long for this track. Honestly, if you kept it to like 2 or 3 minutes in length, it would have been much better and might actually be more enjoyable. That being said, I do really like the sounds in this track. The synths are definitely reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s, and again, he's carrying that feeling and atmosphere throughout this album, to be honest, trying to recreate those sounds from when trance was at its peak. The soundscape at the end is actually really interesting as well. Has some very interesting sounds there, and it actually perks me up once I'm like 4 minutes into the song and there's only a few seconds left. It perks you up, gets you ready for the next song. And then again, there's another unnoticeable, almost, transition between that song and Take a Moment. Then we come to the seventh track, and in my opinion, the worst track on the album, which is Take a Moment. Again, this track is like 5 minutes in length, and it's even more generic than Full Focus, and there's nothing really interesting in there sound-wise. It's quite boring, and actually it annoys me when it comes up and I just have to change. I haven't listened to that track when I've been listening to the album in ages. I haven't listened to it like since I first got it, because it just annoys me. And yeah, enough said really. It's just a boring, generic trance track, and it annoys me.
You're on the telephone telling me that she's gone.
Then we come to the 8th track, Feels So Good, which again is a good track. I especially like the guitar sounds in this track, and I definitely think it shows very clearly that Armin is trying to experiment more with different styles, not just obviously being a prisoner of his own style, which is the quote put in his book, and one of his aims for this album really, which was to explore different styles and not be a prisoner of his own style that's got him to where he is today, which I think is very good and definitely shows a creative, decent artist in terms of the music industry. It's much more poppy, which is really the kind of main indicator that he's experimenting with styles, because a lot of his music doesn't sound that poppy. It sounds more like a trance genre than the pop genre, but that was definitely not the case with this track. And yeah, it's a good, decent track in all honesty. Really like the guitar sounds again, and the synth sounds that keep popping up throughout the track.
Autumn leaves we treat as litter.
Now, when I said Not Giving Up on Love was probably my favourite track from the album, I think I meant Virtual Friend, because it is an incredibly strong contender for being the best track from this album, and one of the best tracks that, to be honest, Armin's ever created, not just on this album. That's not just because of the reminiscent trance sounds of the 90s and 2000s, it's not because of the incredibly energetic beat, which I absolutely adore. It's because of how unique it is. I mean, Armin had never made any sort of track like this with a completely different style, like Virtual Friend, back when he's making his earlier music, and so far he hasn't made anything like it since. The unique style, there is no singing in this track, it's more spoken word, not rapping as such, but you know, the lyrics are spoken, they're not sung, although they are spoken in a sing-song kind of tone. And also because the lyrics were actually thoughtfully created and weren't just made to make the track sound more atmospheric, which is normally what trance music has. They have lyrics with not very much meaning most of the time, although there are a few exceptions, but I definitely think that the lyrics in this track had a definite deeper meaning, because they were about problems that the human race is facing. And if that's not thought-provoking in the way that it was done as well, then I don't know what is. An interesting comparison that first came to my head when I first heard this was of an old favourite of mine by Steven Wilson called Perfect Life from his album Hand Cannot Erase, because in that song there's a spoken kind of creative narrative at the start of that song, which was very similar to this track, and maybe Armin had heard it too, and maybe he was inspired to write something similar, I don't know, but I definitely think the comparison is very clear, and that they're very similar tracks. I actually need to listen to more Steven Wilson. Anyway, I really like the guitar sounds, both electric and acoustic alike. Again, the beat is incredibly energetic, and I absolutely adore it. And it's, again, I guess, it's an example of Armin, again, experimenting with different styles, because this was completely unlike anything he'd ever made before, and honestly, if he continues making music like this, in the future and sticks with his style, then I might actually end up respecting him more as a person. And I will definitely love his music more if he continues to make music like that, because that absolutely blew me away when I heard it the first time, and my jaw was open unintentionally. I was just, staring into space, thinking about what was being said. It was amazing. And if he continues to make music like that, then I'll definitely listen to his music more often than I already do, and respect him more potentially as a person. One thing I will say though is that in that track, the trance style, his old style, is certainly coming across in parts here and there throughout the song, which is nice because it suggests that although he's experimenting, he's not completely, he's assuring his fans that he's not completely moving away from his style, which I think is really nice. Then we move on to the 11th track, Down to Love, which tries to make up for the pitiful excuse that is the 10th track, Drowning. It's a good track, a good trance track. There's a good beat, again some nice synth sounds in there that are reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s. And the vocals of the singer, Anna Criado, I think that's how you pronounce her name, really bring both of those together. Piano's especially nice in this one, although nothing like the next track, which I will definitely be talking about in a minute. It is a bit too long though, because it's around 4 minutes long, I think, and I definitely think if it was half of that, then I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I do have a slight problem with how long it is. It does go on for a bit more than it should, but hey ho, it's still a good track. And then we move on to the 12th track, Coming Home. And honestly, I have a lot to say about this track. I mean, just for reference, it is probably one of the tracks that convinced me at first to get this album. And it was, I think, the track actually that made me look up his albums when I was initially listening to him to start with, to find out which album this was on, because I was just thinking, I've got to get this is amazing. And yeah, I think that's probably partially one of the reasons why I actually bought his albums, was because of this track. It's definitely my favourite on the album, although Virtual Friend again is a strong contender for that, but I definitely think currently that it is top place as my favourite track on the album, and a very, very strong contender as possibly being one of the best tracks he's ever produced. In fact, I think it might be, in all honesty. It's just amazing. It's a true original trance track with echoey synths, dreamy echoes, and some really nice electric guitar improv near the end, which is really interesting and is absolutely amazing to listen to. I obviously love the piano. The piano is the best bit of this track. When that came in, I just remember my mind being completely blown away. I was just sitting there literally in a trance. And when you're literally entranced by a trance piece of music like that, then you know it definitely is an original trance track, and it's definitely proved its function. The 90s snare roll, again, is absolutely perfect, and I love the fact that he put that in there. I was thinking, I hope there's a 90s snare roll just about now, and there was, and I was just like, oh, you have to listen to the track in full. If you haven't, it's absolutely amazing. I love it, and it definitely proves that Armin van Buuren is the King of Trance, potentially. Then on to the 13th track, which again does not disappoint and continues the momentum that Coming Home built up towards the end. The Silent Hearts, again, it has a strong bass beat and is another firm favourite from the album. The vocals again help and create this amazing atmosphere, and there are some really good trance synth sounds, and the beat again is amazing. And all of it is reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s, and it's just another good example of a trance track and a really enjoyable track to listen to. The 14th track, Orbion, I was really tempted to skip over because although it's again a good example of a trance track, we've already had plenty of good examples of trance tracks throughout this album, and it's nothing really special, so I thought I was just going to skip over it. But honestly, having just listened to back to it before I began this this review, I think it deserves some attention in that again there are some really good trance synth sounds within there, reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s. The vocals in it are quite haunting, to be honest, and it has its ups and downs, but for me, I can't really say very much on it because I find it quite generic, although many of you will probably disagree with me. I do find it quite generic though, and nothing special, so I'm just going to brush over it. It probably deserves more attention than I've actually given to it, so apologies for that. Then we move on to the 15th track, Minak, which is Armin van Buuren featuring, I think his name's Ferry Corsten. I've never heard of him before, and I honestly don't even know if it's I don't even know. I've never heard of the name Ferry before, is it? Is Ferry a boy or a girl? Either way, I really like this track. I think it has there's a really interesting sample of like a guy saying something. I can't work out what he's saying, but that keeps popping up, and it's obviously repeated on a repeat. And yeah, I really like that. Again, there's some good trance sounds in general, some good synth sounds reminiscent of the 90s and 2000s, and the beat throughout it is energetic, and it's just a really enjoyable track to listen to with the kind of ethereal atmosphere of the synth echoing in the background. I really like this track, and when it comes up, I definitely feel happy when listening to it. It's just, I don't know, it's just quite it makes you feel relaxed, I guess. That relaxing feeling gently takes you into the last track, Utopia, which features Adam Young from the very lovely Owl City. For those of you who listen to the track, you'll definitely recognise the vocals as being the man who is Owl City. But yeah, I really like this track. Again, I like the beat. I love the vocals of Adam Young. I think he's very talented with his vocals, and they're utterly unique, which is probably most of the reason as to why he became so popular, because his voice is just so unique. But I think that was very well chosen of Armin, and I think he did a very good job, Adam, on this track. He definitely made it shine through, and it's just a very kind of almost nostalgic track, which is very clever of Armin to place at the end, because it kind of, again, similar to what I said about Sub Focus on my review of his album Torus, it makes the viewer want to listen to the album again because they're feeling nostalgic. If you haven't seen that review, by the way, on a side note, please watch it. I'll provide a link in the description. But yeah, that's the end of the album, and you want to listen to the album again because of that last track making you feel nostalgic. And I think it was quite a nice way to end the album. There were probably better tracks that could have ended the album in a more stylish, nicer way, but I think it's nice. It's a good track. So yeah, that's my review anyhow, guys, in detail of Armin van Buuren's 2010 album Mirage. Although I do like this album, it's probably not my favourite album by Armin van Buuren. I've only listened to 2 of his albums, one of which is this one, the other of which is, let me just lean over here, Intense, which I think is my favourite album by him. I currently am in love with a lot of the tracks from this album, more so than in this album, although there are some tracks I will continuously come back to in this album. I definitely think that there are fewer more generic tracks in this album than in Mirage, where there are quite a few generic tracks, to be honest, in comparison to Intense, where there aren't so many generic tracks and you're interested with most of the tracks in that album. But I will review that album at a later date. But yeah, I probably need to listen to more of his music from his other albums, although currently, in terms of what I'm listening to, I'm happier to kind of listen to other artists, and I think I've heard, I might be wrong, but I think I've heard the best of this man so far. The music he's released recently, to be honest, hasn't been, it's far more poppy now, and he's gone down a very poppy route, and I've lost interest in his music now when I've listened to his more recent works. So who knows, though, in the future he might surprise me and I might want to go back to listening to some of his other albums that I haven't heard yet. Who knows what I'm missing out on, honestly. In the world of Armin van Buuren, you can never be sure what you're missing. Thanks, guys, for watching this video. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, please subscribe. I definitely felt the impact from stopping regularly uploading when I've lost 2 subscribers currently. So please subscribe and like the video, comment, show your support as you always do, and I will see you for another video very soon.